Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming. I appreciate you all, guys, whether you're watching us on YouTube or on Rumble. If you don't know, I have studied in Lebanon. I have lived in Lebanon. I worked in Lebanon. I have many great friends in Lebanon. I have so much emotions for Lebanon. There I have grew up. I made friends, networks. This was the place where I started as a journalist in 2013. And what's happening today in Lebanon, it bleeds my heart. However, this is not the time for whining. It's not the time for tears. And today I am joined with a special guest from Beirut, Laith Marouf. He is an award-winning journalist, political commentator, and the executive director of Free Palestine TV. Laith, thank you so much for joining me today on Syriana Analysis. I would love to have with you a live conversation of what's happening today in Lebanon. It's been almost 11 months since October 7 and Hezbollah joined this fight, and they said this is Jabhat al-Isnad, which means like they have come in support of the Palestinian factions in Gaza. And they have been engaged in acts of hostilities with the Israeli side. But in the past 11 months, this was like a tit for a tat with the Israeli side. But it seems that Israel decided to go into full power. They are today bombarding Lebanon into full extent. And we've seen hundreds of casualties. Could you tell us first, let's take this step by step, what happened today exactly? What are the numbers of casualties? And what do we know so far about this bombardment of the military and civilian infrastructure in Lebanon?
Well, great to be with you, Kevork. Thank you for this invitation. The day has started almost like a continuation of yesterday, but at a higher intensity. So tens of villages and towns in the south of Lebanon, all the way to the edges of Sur, or what is called Tyre in English, the main tourist beach area in the south of Lebanon, have been targeted with at least 400 air raids since last night. And we are seeing the numbers of martyred actually doubling every few hours. We started the day with 50 somewhat martyrs. Now we're at 200 and something martyrs, according to the Ministry of Health of Lebanon, and the number of injured is over 1,000. And again, these are all preliminary numbers because you have isolated areas that are unreachable and or buildings that have been leveled that civilians are under. The Ministry of Health also announced that at least 2 paramedics were martyred in an attack on an ambulance, and at least 12 other emergency workers have been injured in targeted attacks by the Zionist colony. In retaliation, Hezbollah has been conducting the largest wave of missile volleys that we have seen since 2006. Hundreds of missiles fired specifically at Israeli military bases and military industrial complexes and the Israeli air bases. For instance, we know it's been now 2 times since the morning that Hezbollah hit the Rafael industrial military complex north of Haifa, one that came out in Hudhud 1, the Hoppo 1 video that Hezbollah showed us, and the Ramat David air field, which is the largest and most important Israeli military airfield in the north of Palestine, one of 3 major air bases, has been hit multiple times. This, along with the major concentration bases for the artillery in the Golan Heights, occupied Syrian Golan Heights, and in the northern Galilee of Palestine, multiple locations where the artillery are gathered and or where the storage for weapons for the Israeli military have been hit. And we saw basically these waves hit everything from the border of Lebanon all the way down to Haifa and Safad. This is now a firing zone for Hezbollah, and since the morning, numbers keep on increasing of the waves of escape of Israeli colonists from the north of Palestine. We're being told by Israeli media right now that Haifa is practically a ghost town right now. So there's, for the first time since 1948, Haifa has been liberated of colonists, Zionist colonists. And this is just the beginning of this war. We heard threats from the Israelis that they will be attacking the Ministry of Information and Communication here in Beirut. There was messages sent to the minister's office. So the Beqa' Valley is being hit. And as we were coming on, we're hearing that Tel Aviv was also hit by the resistance.
What's the military objective of Netanyahu? Many people say this is to drag the United States into a wider conflict in the region. Today, this is just my speculation. I argued that this type of attacks, like targeting civilian infrastructure, homes, killing hundreds of people in southern Lebanon, it's a move to push the Lebanese people north of the Litani River, and the Netanyahu wants to later eventually use their eventual return as leverage for similar return of Israelis to the northern settlements. How do you see this objective of Israel?
Yeah, I mean, the declared objective is the return of these colonists to the north of Palestine. They've announced that they added it to the other three objectives that they have for this war, which are all the other three are leading and relating to Gaza. So, this is a unachievable goal, just like the goals that they set for Gaza. The Israelis, at least what they're announcing, these are unachievable goals, which means if me and you can understand it's an unachievable goal to try to defeat Hamas, an idea of resistance, then why would the Israeli elite and government announce these as the objectives? The only answer that we can find is that they know also that these are unachievable objectives, and that the real objective that they have is genocide, is ethnic cleansing of the land of Palestine and the land of Bilad al-Sham to achieve their, Euphrates to Nile, promised land Armageddon scenario. And the United States and the whole West is actually behind them in this genocidal objective. This is the only thing that we can understand from, the cyber terrorist attack on the pagers and the walkie-talkies. It didn't happen in the midst of a war where you could think and argue that this would, affect Hezbollah's activities and abilities in the midst of a war. It happened in a moment of there's not real war, and it didn't really add to the possibilities of Israel having the ability to achieve anything in Lebanon. So what did they do? They did it just for terrorism. They did it to objectively, they wanted to kill as many civilians as possible. That's the only possible explanation for it. So we go back to this. Their goal is genocide. Are they going to be able to achieve it? That is now only can be answered with how far the United States is willing to go in its defense of this undefensible colony.
Objectively speaking, Laith, do you agree with me that Israel at least partially achieved its goal of terrifying the people? Because you mentioned like this is an act of terrorism. They wanted to terrify the people. And after the pagers attack, we've seen countless of, let's say, people posting on social media platforms. Of course, they're ordinary people. They're not fighters. They're not combatants. They were terrified. And today with these relentless attacks against the civilian homes, some of them are our friends. Basically, I follow them on X, and they say we don't even have like a fighting knife in our home, and we've been bombed, and we left our apartment. So some people are really terrified by these attacks. But from your perspective, you're in Beirut. What are the sentiments in Lebanon, knowing that Lebanon is a very divided society, and some of half the people are with Hezbollah and half the people are against Hezbollah or don't prefer Hezbollah, let's say. It's a very divided politically, sectarian, and Israel is capable of using these divisions, right?
They think that they are capable to use these divisions. But look at the whole world, how it has changed since October 7th. You know, the vast majority of humanity was kind of overtaken by Western propaganda for decades prior to September 11. September 11, we, you know, kind of destroyed all the banking that the West has put into their propaganda of, you know, hate against Arabs, hate against Muslims, and supremacy of Western ideals or supremacy of Israel, or claiming that, you know, all the propaganda about the Holocaust that Israel banked on for 80 years to make the Western population docile against their clear genocide of the Palestinian people is gone now. So similarly to what happened in all of humanity, where we have now a global consciousness because of we are saturated with the reality on the ground that is in total dichotomic, you know, opposite to the propaganda that the West is pushing out. Similarly, that happened in Lebanon. In Lebanon, there's been a huge change, I think, since last year, even in the popular opinion, even in parts of the society, like let's say the Maronite sect of the Christian population, that the West has invested 100 years of money and propaganda in trying to get them to hate the rest of their Lebanese compatriots, or to hate Palestinians, or to stand against Palestine, the land of Jesus that they believe in as Maronites, right? But now surveys that were just done 2 weeks ago, this is before even these mass terrorist attacks were conducted by the Zionists, show that the vast majority of Lebanese people, you know, something like 70% of all sects, believe that Hezbollah is doing its best to minimize the harm on Lebanese populations, and all its actions are justified. Also, this, you remember that the hate that was there, you know, after the civil war in Lebanon, when all that propaganda machine created to blame the Palestinian people for the civil war. Now we're talking 2 generations after. Now we're also talking about the whole Lebanese population watching the Palestinian people fight for themselves on their own territory, not using Lebanon or Jordan or what have you to fight the oppressor. And they're showing the whole globe the most heroic actions and the biggest sacrifices that any of us on this planet have seen for freedom. And so this is a huge change in Lebanon. And I don't think the Israelis or the West are capable to mobilize anybody right now against Hezbollah internally.
That's something that I hope that there won't be internal, let's say, strife in Lebanon, and let's say hitting the Hezbollah in the back, because it was the case in 2006. Some of these Salafi groups tried to stop Hezbollah in the back, and it's always the same scenario over and over again. And these Salafists, Takfiris, they have been supported by Israel in the past, something that most people, especially in the West, do not know. And it's still mind-boggling how many of them do not do the research, and especially during the Syrian war, and see on whose side was Israel during this conflict. And speaking of the
Glory to
Israeli,
all the martyrs of Syria, the
yeah,
300 and somewhat thousand Syrian soldiers that died to stop the hordes of Wahhabi death squads that the West and Israel sent on Syria just to force it to abandon our brothers and sisters in Lebanon and in Palestine. Syria paid the biggest price for the liberation of Palestine of any nation on this planet, and it still continues to do so. And the leadership and the military of Syria still today refuse to give up on the liberation of Palestine and our brothers in Lebanon and Syria and Palestine.
Leith, since you mentioned Syria, I wanted to discuss with you the role of Syria. But since you mentioned it, I want to just show a photo for our friends watching us on Syriana Analysis. This is a photo of a Fadi-2 missile, which was fired by Hezbollah, I believe, 2 days ago, and which reached to Haifa. And this missile has been, first of all, the name is M302. Hezbollah called it Fadi-2. It reaches 100 to 160 kilometer. It has 302 millimeter, and it has 750 kilograms. It is 750 kilograms, and its warhead is 150 kilograms. And this was developed in the Syrian Research Center in Masyaf, where Israel consistently tries to bomb this region. And these weapons later were sent to Hezbollah, which is now being used against the Israeli occupation forces. How do you see the role of Syria during this conflict in terms of the weapon supplies to Hezbollah, and then Hezbollah delivering the knowledge and the parts, let's say the technology of these weapons to the Palestinian factions fighting against Israel?
You know, the Syrian military industrial complex and scientific research centers are not only a cornerstone of the whole axis of resistance, production of weapons and development of weapons, but even during the 80s, the relationship that Syria had with North Korea, North Korea's glorious achievements of these ballistic missiles and nuclear warheads that they have wouldn't have been achieved without also the collaboration of our engineers and scientists in Masyaf and other facilities around the country. And remember, the Israelis attacked the Deir ez-Zor reactor that was being built, and the North Koreans were helping with that building. So Syria has always been the backbone of all decolonial, anti-imperialist work across this planet, from North Korea to Cuba. Okay, and this role Syria has taken seriously for now 60 years, accepting that challenge and the weight that comes with being such an important link in the production of sovereignty for nations around the world. There are scientists have been targeted specifically because of that. Many martyrs have been given by our scientific corps and our military corps. And finally, I would say right now, as we're speaking, all those amazing weapons that the Palestinians in Gaza are using, video after video showing us destruction of Israeli armaments, those are all made in Gaza, but they're made on machinery that the Syrian military sneaked into, smuggled into Gaza. And inside those factories, without those Syrian machinery, right now the resistance in Gaza wouldn't be able to do what it does and continue this resistance. And as we're speaking also, the Syrian military and the Syrian government continue, as we speak, to smuggle weapons and machinery into Gaza to help the Palestinians continue to resist the genocide that they're facing.
Since you mentioned the victims on the Syrian side, I want to show our friends this report on the Association Press. This is from 2018. In August 2018, blast kills Syrian arms program researcher. A researcher director at the military agency linked to Syria's, of course, this is fake news. This has nothing to do with chemical weapon program, was assassinated. A newspaper close to the Syrian government reported. The pro-government Al Watan newspaper reported on its website that Aziz Esper of the Scientific Studies and Research Center died in a blast targeting his car Saturday night in Syria's Hama province. So Aziz Esper, he was in charge of developing these missiles that are hitting now the Israeli occupation forces. However, I don't usually want to speak about this case, but it's important for the foreign audience to also learn what's happening in the Arab world. For example, some of the Palestinian voices still, let's say, criticize Hezbollah and Syria. For example, Raja Abdel Haq, he is the executive director of Ashura New York and co-founder of Al Quds Network. It's a very big also websites, and he says it's understandable for people to not forget Iran and Hezbollah crimes in Syria, but the claim that they don't have an animosity with Israel and American imperialism is just absurd. Why do you think some people, especially on the Palestinian in the Palestinian community, believe that Hezbollah has committed war crimes in Syria, and especially against the civilian population and especially against children and kids? This is the main talking point on social media.
Yeah, before I answer that, I want to say, of course, Dr. Asper, martyr Dr. Asper, was responsible. This is the reason they assassinated him. He was responsible for modifying the SAM-200 missiles, anti-air defenses, to make it able to shoot down an Israeli F-15, F-16, as we saw in the beginning of bombardment by the Israeli Air Force, and that was what we see today being used by Hezbollah in Lebanon to defend its airspace against the Hermes and so on. Those are his achievements. He was assassinated for being able to give Syria the ability to defend itself without having to beg Russia or others for weapons that seem to be not allowed to use, like the S-300. Finally, about the Palestinian population, unfortunately, like the majority of the Arabic people, they were brainwashed by Al Jazeera in its heyday. Al Jazeera invested, and the Americans behind them allowed them to invest in trying to propagate around the Arabic world. They were allowed, as Al Jazeera, to look like that they are pro-Palestinian and then to be nasty on everything else, on every Arabic republic that gained independence after World War II through a liberation struggle. Those became the target for Al Jazeera, and this is what we know as the Arabic Spring. I call it the Arab Autumn. This investment that the West and Al Jazeera had specifically on to pollute the mind of Palestinian population is, I think, for the most part right now wasted. There's no more. It's very hard. What the West is requesting, not only of the Palestinian and Arabic audience, what they're requesting of all of humanity is to deny what we see in our own eyes, to deny what we hear, to deny the reality around us. Yes, and to live in this fantasy world. So Al Jazeera, even right now, I was watching, and I hate watching them. It makes me very disgusted when I have to flip and watch on them a little bit. But as we are speaking right now, they're covering this attacks on Lebanon, and they're still throwing poison against the resistance. And Lebanon is fighting for the liberation of Palestine. And by the way, one last thing for our audience to understand how much the resistance also here in Lebanon has given to Palestine. In 2006, everybody thinks that the attack of Israel was about returning a few Israeli soldiers that were captured by Hezbollah. If you remember, there was 2 weeks of bombardment of Gaza just before that. It was after Hamas won the elections, and there was an attempted coup by the PA and Mossad inside, and they started bombarding Gaza, and it was left alone. And Hezbollah took the risk to distract the Zionists from attacking Gaza in 2006, so they don't do what they're doing today then. And thank God Hezbollah was victorious and gave so much. That's also for the liberation of Palestine. All of the victims, the martyrs of 2006, were for the liberation of Palestine.
And despite that, then people say, of course, some of them rightfully so, that Hamas betrayed Hezbollah in 2011 and they joined the fight against the Syrian government, Syrian army, and Assad himself. And they really can't, I mean, on a political bureau level, I'm 100% sure that they knew what's the project in Syria. But we're speaking of more like a grassroots level. How is it possible in 2024 that people cannot make the link yet that the war in Syria basically gave Israel 10 years of, let's say, gave it 10 years ahead by destroying Syria? Imagine the situation now if Syria was not destroyed, right? How is it possible for them in 2024 not to be able to make these links? And we're speaking of intelligent people with big podcasts, with big platforms on social media platforms.
Well, some people refuse to ever apologize for their mistakes, so we shouldn't hold our breath. Okay.
True.
What's important is that we continue telling the truth, and we are winning. The majority of humanity right now laughs at any Palestinian that is still propagating this BS. So look, I think the political bureau of Hamas at the time under Mish'al control, and he is a big problem, Mish'al, got swept away in the Arab autumn that was designed by Obama and Al Jazeera to bring in the Muslim Brotherhood into control of the Arabic republics that escaped colonialism at the end of World War II. And so we saw, of course, Tunis, Egypt, Libya, Syria, and Yemen being the target. None of the fascist governed kingdoms in the Arabic world that never fought their colonizer were targeted in this. Obviously, Hamas being a member in what used to be the Central Muslim Brotherhood International Organization, thought that, well, this wave of Muslim brotherhoods could lead to the liberation of Palestine or aid from other parts of the Arabic or Muslim world. And of course, they were shocked very fast when Morsi, the first thing that he did is he shut down the border with Gaza and he started mobilizing Egyptians to go kill their Syrian brothers and to support the Wahhabi death squads that were invading our country. And of course, I think since then there has been a huge change, not only in Hamas. First off, the Muslim Brotherhoods were defeated as a U.S. alternative to rule the Arabic world. And then the Wahhabi death squads that were the other alternative that the U.S. wanted to control these republics were also minced in the killing fields of Syria and Iraq because of the strength and steadfastness of the Syrian military and its allies on the battlefield. And so we saw a huge change. And this is why we see how isolated Mish'al is right now. The people that are in control of Hamas have apologized now. Sinwar and those who are on the ground in Gaza have always objected to what Mish'al and those who are outside Gaza did in that stupid betting that somehow Palestine will be in a better off situation with the Muslim Brotherhood control of the Arabic world.
Laith, you mentioned that most people they object this narrative that for the Palestinians or for the Arabic people who still are in opposition of Syria and for Hezbollah. And this is just an example of a colleague. He's from Propaganda and Co podcast, very big account, as you see. And he is, of course, seconding the thoughts of the Raja Abdul Haq. And I said, what a load of bullshit. Hezbollah intervened in Syria to protect the borders between Syria and Lebanon when the CIA-backed terrorists tried to occupy the Al Qusayr city, which is vital for the military assistance of Syria to Hezbollah. Hezbollah. Secondly, Hezbollah intervened and fought against the world's most brutal terror groups such as al-Nusra, ISIS, Jaish al-Islam, Ahrar al-Sham, Islamic Turkestan Army, the Uzbeki and Chechen terrorists, etc. Do you really think Hezbollah went to Syria to fight the civilians? I mean, I'm not claiming that this could be used as a measure, but if you see the likes that I received, the 1,000 like, and compared to his, which is on his own personal page, you see that the people's mood has changed even among his own followers, let's say, in this case. And this is something promising. I hope that this continues. I will ask you a provocative question posed by one of the viewers now of Syriana Analysis. He says, why is Hezbollah ruining the life of Lebanon's people? Just leave Israel alone. It's not worth the fight. What does it gain for Lebanon and its people? You live in Lebanon.
Yes. I mean, there's two things. One is all of us in this region do not want the presence of Zionists on our land. There's Lebanese territory that is occupied, 8 different villages. There's Syrian territory that is occupied, Palestinian territory that is occupied. And we reject the idea that Western Europeans, or whether they're Christian, Jewish, or secular, are more supreme to us, that we are equal to every other human. That's what we want. And Palestine and the lands of Greater Syria, Bilad al-Sham, have always been lands that absorb refugees and travelers and immigrants for a time immemorial. But also, we have been lands that reject occupation and colonization since time immemorial. Every empire that tried to stay in our land by force was ejected by our people, even the largest empires before this empire that we're dealing with in the United States. And the Palestinian and the Lebanese people themselves will not be free, will not know a day of peace if there's one Zionist colonist left on our land in Palestine.
Laith, I also want to just answer a question posed one of our friends. He says, Kevork, do you think Israel and Azerbaijan working together also against Armenia in the background? Azerbaijan is considered an advanced satellite state for Israel. Israel supported Azerbaijan's war efforts against the Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh to ethnically cleanse the Armenians and establish an Azeri rule over Nagorno-Karabakh on the borders with Iran. And if you guys want to know more about this case, go to your search engine, if you have Google or something, and type Azerbaijan smart village Israel. And you will see the smart villages that Israel is establishing on the borders with, let's say, Iran. And they use Azerbaijan as a territory to spy on Iran. The Mossad operatives say, as this is was mentioned in a leaked document that I read on WikiLeaks from an Israeli embassy, leaks say that one of the Mossad operatives, we in Azerbaijan, we feel at home. And there are no restrictions for the Mossad operatives in Azerbaijan. So yes, of course, I think that Israel is supporting Azerbaijan against the Armenians, also giving it huge supply of weapons and technology, which were all used against the Armenians. And also Azerbaijan sells its gas to through Turkey to to Israel. Don't really listen to Erdogan's barking against Israel. They are all conspiring against the Palestinians. I'm really tired of explaining this to the public, but every time during times of conflict, people fall for the same trap of Erdogan saying that he's going to send his army to liberate Palestine, to do this and that, and then they conspire against the Palestinians. Lace, another player here. By the way, just for you to know, this is the first time I do live streaming and I get over 1,000 people. Over 1,000 people are watching this live. This is the first time. The maximum was 800 people in the past. So people are enjoying this live streaming. Before I move to the second question, since there are over 1,000 people watching, guys, I put already the X account of Free Palestine TV in the description below. Also, the channel on Rumble, and most importantly, also the website of Free Palestine TV is in the description below. And through this link, you can support the work of Laith Marouf, who is now in Beirut. So that would be amazing because we're here supporting each other as independent journalists. Laith, what about Iran? People are
Yeah,
telling me, so where is your Iran? Where Iran says that we're going to retaliate, we're going to do this and that, and it's just a talk. And now Hezbollah is getting bombarded heavily, and the people are getting bombarded heavily in Lebanon, and Iran doesn't do anything.
well, Kevork, I want to say something that I've never said live anywhere before. First off, I am from Deir ez-Zor, Beit Marouf, okay? And Marouf Arfi are one of the biggest families in Deir ez-Zor. My great uncle was the Mufti of Al Jazeera in the last days of the Ottoman Empire. And he was the Mufti of Deir ez-Zor after independence in Syria. His family, our family basically, when the Kurdish death squads led by the Ottoman and Turkish army were chasing our brothers and sisters, Armenian brothers and sisters in the fields of Al Jazeera, massacring, my family hid hundreds of Armenian people, and including many that are best family friends, intermarried even into our family from Deir ez-Zor. And so we as Syrians, true Lebanese, true Palestinians, we also remember the starvation campaigns of the Ottomans against Syria and Lebanon. We remember that the Ottomans took over half of the population of Syria, Lebanon, and Palestine and threw them on the front lines of World War I as cannon fodder. Those are true things that we have a relationship with our brothers and sisters in Armenia that is historic. Our lands, our history is intertwined, and the Ottomans, the invading Mongols, are not part of this continuous history that is there between us. And of course, Azerbaijan is the biggest tool of the Israelis in the region, and unfortunately, the Kurdish people have allowed themselves to be led with also a gang that has committed genocide against our Armenian, Assyrian, and Syrian brothers and sisters since the World War I. And they are continuing to do so. The Kurdish leadership is acting exactly like the Zionists. They want to colonize Armenian, Arab, Assyrian lands and create an ethnic state. And similarly, Azerbaijan, unfortunately, the people of Azerbaijan have let themselves to be led with similar mentality of creating a fascist state that attacks its brothers and sisters in Armenia. There is intermarriage between Azerbaijanis and Armenians. This is all forced on us by the West. And now, after that rant, I can talk about Iran. Look, a lot of couch warriors around the world don't understand what does a decolonization struggle require. We are strong as an axis of resistance, but truth of the matter, we're facing the biggest empire history has known, with the ability to print money as well, with the most advanced weapons that the planet has known, with AI, with technology that is unchallengeable. And therefore, our path forward for liberation is that same path that every other nation before us decolonizing had to take, which is it's a long struggle of attrition against a bigger enemy, but we have more determination. And the Algerian people gave 2 million martyrs in the last few years of the revolution, and 6 million martyrs in total during the French occupation. The Vietnamese, Laotians, and Cambodians had to sacrifice 6 million people to gain their freedom from France and the United States. It will be a delusion to think that we can liberate Palestine from the most vicious empire humanity has known with any less sacrifice and with shorter time period. And this is why the axis of resistance is playing the long game. You will not see reactionary, reckless attacks by the axis of resistance. Today, the Israelis are killing Lebanese people, civilians. Still, Hezbollah responds by attacking only military sites. Until where there's no return, then you will see a full out. But this war will go on till after the next American president comes in. Israel has full okay by the West to do whatever it wants to until the next president comes in, and who knows what's going to happen from now till then.
So, where are we heading now, Laith? Are we headed to a full-fledged war? I mean, in my interpretation, this is a declaration of war against Lebanon. And are we expected to see also ground invasion, or this is just going to be airstrikes against Lebanon? What do you expect?
I mean, the prime minister of the caretaker government in Lebanon, Amikati, just spoke of an hour ago or something. He said it's a declaration of war. We're in full war right now. You know, the Israelis may dream about invading Lebanon. And as Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah in his last speech said, we, you know, hope for it. We wish for it. You know, if the Israelis come out of their underground you know, bunkers, this Israeli military, and tries to walk into Lebanon, they're much easier targets. Hezbollah is, you know, spending so much energy on trying to find every little soldier when he walks in or out of a bunker before they hit them. Now they will be up in the open air, and of course, the last time the Israelis tried to do this in 2006, there was the Merkava massacre in the south of Lebanon, 40 somewhat Merkavas in one blow. And you know, they couldn't you know, walk in more than a few kilometers into the territory before they had to retreat. Well, we are living in a new world. We're living new methods of war, so we may see surprises on all sides. As we've been seeing right now, we've been shocked after shock after shock. Nobody can predict the little details, and I think we are you know, going into prolonged war. This is not going to be short, and everybody, not only in our region, needs to be prepared for this. I think the whole globe needs to be prepared, because if this war breaks out even beyond Lebanon, where all supplies of oil and gas and transportation and communication across the globe are affected, this may slide very fast into a world war. Definitely, this is the most crucial war that humanity has fought since World War II. We are now in the beginnings of that.
Guys, Laith mentioned something that happened in 2006, and in Arabic we say the massacre of Mir Karas. This is the article from, it's written in 2021. However, in 2006, in the last days of the July war, Israel lost around 30 Merkavas against Hezbollah, and they were completely destroyed and documented on video. And there is a story, I think, here by Secretary General of Hassan Nasrallah. He mentioned, I believe, this a few years ago to the press during an interview, and he said that the Cornet rockets that they received that they used against these Merkavas were from the Syrian stockpile. And Syria bought this for its army, and in the contract, they state that this has to be exclusive for the Syrian army. Syria cannot really give Russian weapons to the Hezbollah side. So Syria and Hezbollah expected for Russia to be upset, he says. But then they realized that the Russians were not upset at all, because this was the best advertisement ever for the Russian weaponry, basically destroying and melting the mighty or the strong, undefeated Israeli Merkavas. So I think this was also an important note to make before we end up today's conversation with Laith Marouf. Laith, thank you so much for coming to the show. There are 1,300 people watching this on YouTube right now. I believe this video will be watched by at least 50 to 60,000 people. Guys, when you're watching this video, just hit the like button. That would be really I would really appreciate it. And also subscribe. When you subscribe to this channel, and the number of the subscribers increase, also, let's say the bigger heads, those who are now very famous in this political scene on YouTube, they would probably also come down from their high thrones and accept to come and speak to us on Syriana Analysis, because unfortunately we live in a day during times that numbers matter on social media. And also for you, I encourage highly to go and follow Free Palestine TV, first on X, secondly on Rumble, and thirdly the website where you can support the independent work of Laith. Laith, thank you so much for coming to the show.
Thank you for having me, Kevork. See you soon.
Thank you so much, guys, for tuning into today's live streaming. I appreciate all of you. We will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be Tuesday, 5 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. Eastern American Time. Peace be upon you, upon your families. Salam.